Hey gang, GP here. Today's show is about high stakes interviews, or for that matter, how to deal with any high stakes, pressure packed situation. And usually that means a job interview or some other interview where you're trying to get something you want. We're going to talk about some bad interviews we've seen, and we have some recordings of those. People like Lance Armstrong and President Bill Clinton. And we have some good ones, Simone Biles, and somebody who gave the greatest interviews of all time, because just ask him, he was the greatest, Muhammad Ali. We're going to focus on the three keys to success in this arena. First, pay attention, become aware of the situation. Second, learn how to enhance your answers, fill in the blanks, let people know you know what's going on. And then last, and this is an easy one, do your homework. You got to know more about them than they know about you.
You have one unheard message. First unheard message sent yesterday at 7:15 p.m.
Hi, Diana. This is Judy from HR at Global Galactic, calling about your interview last week. We reviewed your candidacy with the 8 people that you met, and I'm sorry, but we just don't think you're a match. We wish you luck on your job search.
End of message. To delete this message, press 7. Message deleted.
Hey, Joanne, it's Diana. Well, I got the Take a Walk call from Global Galactic. You hear from them yet?
Yes, they called me this morning and I got the job. They are hiring me and 3 other entry-level analysts.
Well, cool, I guess. Did they say anything about why they picked you?
Oh goodness, the HR woman, Judy something, wouldn't shut up about how impressed everybody was that I knew the history of the company and the industry. She went on and on about how I talked about how a tech company really started out as a coal mining company 150 years ago.
Huh, none of that is on the company's website.
I know, but I did 3 or 4 hours of research to gather a couple of interesting facts about the business, so I had something different to talk about.
What about college and those summer internships we both did?
They didn't ask me a thing about any of that. I guess it was all in the materials they had on me already.
Congratulations, Joanne. Maybe I will have better luck on the next one.
Well, that's a tough one for young Diana. We can only hope that next time around she pays attention to the three keys of any good high stakes interview. First, pay attention to the situation. Know what's going on around you. Second, learn how to enhance your answers. It's okay to talk a little bit more. And third, do your homework. We're going to talk more about these throughout the show today. But what about some more visible high stakes interviews than the one we had here between Diana and the HR person at Global Galactic? What about somebody like Lance Armstrong? Let's talk about Armstrong for a few minutes. He was thought to be the greatest cyclist in the world back in the 1990s and early 2000s. And his story is an incredible one. At the age of 22, he won his first world championship cycling race. He grew up as a triathlete, then he just switched to full-time cycling. After he won his first race, he was hit with a terrible cancer, and he should have died by all accounts, but he fought through it and he made it. He came back to cycling, and he was better than ever, and he went on to do something just was unprecedented or unheard of, unthinkable for that matter. He won the Tour de France 7 times in a row. Previous records, people might have won it twice in a row or a couple of times over 4 years, things like that, but 7 in a row was ridiculous. So while that was great, it also raised a lot of suspicion as to how could somebody come back from such a devastating illness, come back so fast and be so dominant. Well, this is when we heard all about performance enhancing drugs, PEDs. And they were all over the place in cycling, but Armstrong was accused by everybody of using PEDs. He fought these allegations for years, and Armstrong had a mean streak. He did not like this, and he went after people. He didn't just deny and shrug his shoulders and say, hey, too bad, I won, you lost. He went after people. He sued them. He tried to smear them in public, all that kind of stuff. So he fought it, and then at one point it was just too much. One of his teammates, Tyler Hamilton, was also a great cyclist, actually wrote a book called The Secret Race, and he discloses everything in the book. And he had credibility because Hamilton was implicating himself as well. That kind of blew the lid off of everything, and the rest of Armstrong's teammates also wound up capitulating and saying, hey, yeah, we were guilty. And then finally Armstrong had to face the facts that he was caught red-handed here, cheating. And the way he did it, he did an interview with Oprah Winfrey. And up to this point, Armstrong's life as a celebrity is not over. Yeah, he screwed up. But the point here is the way he handled his high-stakes interview with Oprah, and another one we're going to hear in a minute, is really what brought him down. Let's listen to a clip of the interview he did with Oprah.
Let's start with the questions that people around the world have been waiting for you to answer. And for now, I'd just like a yes or no. Did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Yes or no. Was one of those banned substances EPO?
Yes.
Did you ever blood dope or use blood transfusions to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Did you ever use any other banned substances like testosterone, cortisone, or human growth hormone?
Yes.
Yes or no? In all 7 of your Tour de France victories, did you ever take banned substances or blood dope?
Yes.
In your opinion, was it humanly possible to win the Tour de France without doping 7 times in a row?
Not in my opinion.
And now here he is a couple years later on the BBC. This is about 2 years after his Oprah admission of guilt, if you will, interview.
When it comes to the doping, would you do it again?
If I was racing in 2015, no, I wouldn't do it again, because I don't think you have to do it again. If you take me back to 1995, when it was completely and totally pervasive, I'd probably do it again. People don't like to hear that.
But that's the honest answer.
Yeah, that's the honest answer. It's an answer that needs some explanation. And it's, I look at everything, when I made that decision, when my teammates made that decision, when the whole peloton made that decision, we get it. It was a bad decision in an imperfect time, but it happened. When Lance Armstrong did that, I know what happened because of that. I know that, I know what happened to the sport of cycling from 1999 to 2005. I saw its growth, I saw its expansion. I know what happened with the industry, the cycling industry. I know what happened to Trek bicycles, 100 million in sales to $1 billion in sales. Yeah. I know what happened to my foundation, from raising no money to raising $500 million, serving 3 million people. Do all those people do we want to go make a different decision? Do we want to take it away? I don't think anybody says yes. But what we want, and what I don't really care what anybody else wants. I'll tell you what I would want to do.
So I don't get it. He just can't, the guy cannot function in these situations, is what I think. He's caught red-handed, he admits it, but he is still fighting it. And what's surprising here is our society has a playbook for these things. When you're a celebrity or an athlete and you do something wrong, you admit it. You come clean. You do some kind of rehab or something like that. Then you come back and you do some goodwill activities. And, normally you're more famous than you were before. Just ask people like Tiger Woods, Robert Downey Jr. There's so many of them. Every week there's another story about a celebrity or an athlete coming back from some self-inflicted tragedy. We tend to forgive those that show a little contrition. He could have been more like Andy Pettitte. Andy Pettitte was a great pitcher for the New York Yankees. Not quite a Hall of Famer, but really good. Won a bunch of World Series. And he was part of the steroid scandal in baseball back around the early 2000s. While people like Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, they're still fighting it. They're never going to get into the Hall of Fame because of their fighting of the whole steroid thing instead of throwing the towel in and admitting it. Pettit did something really interesting. When all of this started coming out, Pettit released a statement, and he said, hey, I used some of these drugs for several weeks when I was recovering from an injury. I regret it. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. There was never another story written about Andy Pettit other than what a great player he was, what a great teammate he was, and what a great guy he was. That was it. He came out, admitted the problem, he addressed it head on. Something Armstrong should have done, and he'd have a much different life than he has now. He wouldn't be living this life of obscurity that he's in, because nobody wants to be around somebody like that. Is there anything more high stakes than being president of the United States? Let's talk about President Bill Clinton. Clinton was accused of having an affair with a young White House intern. I believe she was 22 or 24 years old at the time, Monica Lewinsky. And what Lewinsky did is she confided to an older and supposedly wiser friend about her affair with Clinton. And the friend promptly, told everybody, some friend, right? So this was out in the open, pretty much. And Clinton continued to deny this. Again, he didn't want to say, I'm sorry, I screwed up. Here's how he handled this in a televised newscast when the question was put directly to him about the Lewinsky affair.
Now, I have to go back to work on my State of the Union speech, and I worked on it till pretty late last night. But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people.
The best part here is as Clinton spewed these denials, right? His anger and his outrage that he's feigning when he's up there talking. Monica Lewinsky had a dress that was covered in Clinton's DNA. So the guy was so guilty, yet he refused to acknowledge any fault, and he's blaming everybody else. So how did Armstrong and Clinton handle these high-stakes interviews? In a word, poorly. But why? They did not prepare properly. They knew the questions that were coming. So why not be ready? They weren't ready because they stuck to their stories of denial and half-truths, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. There are a few lessons here. First, don't screw up like these guys did, right? Let's start there. But if you do, come clean on your terms. And don't put yourself into these super awkward no-win interviews. Why do that? Are you going to sit down and have another professional who does this for a living, who interviews people for a living? You think you're going to be able to change the situation somehow and get people to believe you? It just doesn't work. Don't get into those no-win interviews. If you have a problem, admit it. And if you're in an interview for a job and something comes up that you didn't know about or makes you look bad, yeah, admit it. Yeah, you're right. I was guilty of that DUI, but that was 5 years ago, and since that time, I don't drink at all. I have a family now, and so on. You just come out and admit it. Don't try to hide it. And worst of all, don't stick to a story that doesn't work. Just because you convince yourself of something, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, right? That doesn't mean anybody's going to believe you. Think about how these answers are going to sound to an audience, not how they sound in your head. Let's go to the 3 keys to thriving in a high-stakes interview. All right, first, pay attention to the situation. Second, enhance your answers. And third, do your homework. So pay attention to the situation. Develop situational awareness. Are you at a company where things are going well? Or you're at a company where things are going poorly? Just read the room a little bit. Thomas Edison did something interesting. He did the soup test When he was interviewing research assistants for his lab, he'd take them out as a group to lunch and he would order soup for everybody. If you put salt and pepper in the soup before tasting it, you gave Edison a lot of information right there. That meant you assumed the soup needed salt and or pepper. Edison didn't want to hire people who made assumptions. He wanted to hire people that did scientific exploration, and they studied and they worked off of facts. They didn't want your opinions and your biases coming in. He did not want any quick and dirty thinking. Number 2, learn how to enhance your answers. Now, this kind of goes against most of the advice we've had our whole lives, which is say as little as you can, or less is more, things like that. But in an interview, it's important to try to fill things out and give them as complete a picture as you can of yourself. You know, one of the questions I love to ask when I interview people, and I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, I always like to ask them, tell me something unusual that happened to you recently. Because this is not something the interviewee can just make up off the top of their head. It can't be scripted as an answer, like if you ask them where they grew up, right? They know where they grew up and they just rattle it off. This is a nice, usually candid conversation that happens. Now, I was interviewing a really soft-spoken young woman, and I asked her to tell me something unusual that happened. And here's what she came up with.
Me and 2 friends were out on our sailboat. A surprise storm blew through and capsized the boat. The 3 of us were in the water and clinging to the hull all night until help arrived the next day.
Well, we'll call her Sally. She got the job because that was a true story. We checked it out, actually, and we hired her. Another example, I had a friend who did not respond to his college essay applications. In his words, I really wasn't much of a writer when I was in high school. But what did he do? He drew pictures that told the story of his life and answered all the essay questions, all with a series of drawings. He was granted admission to the college, went on to be a successful professional, very successful professional, and has been a lifelong supporter of the school. But why do we bring this up? Well, because of that high-stakes situation, that interview, and the results from that, the school changed its application. It added language that said something like the following.
If there are other materials you feel should be submitted with your application so the school can get a more complete understanding of your strength as an applicant, please include. Such materials may include drawings, recordings, videos, or any other materials you deem appropriate.
I never did ask him how he did with his first job interview, but given his level of preparation, creativity, and initiative that he demonstrated with his college application, I might want to talk to him about those job interviews and turn that into another book or maybe even a whole series of podcasts. This is somebody that did the work. He didn't just go in there and try to think quickly on his feet. The third key, and this is easy, guys, do your homework. All right, there are many things you can do as far as doing your homework, but what you shouldn't do is just read the company's website when you're sitting in the lobby and flipping through your phone. You don't want to just parrot back information. Remember Diana in the beginning? Right, she said, hey, that stuff wasn't on the website. How did you find out? Well, it's really easy to find stuff out today. For example, this took me less than 1 minute. Shell Oil was started as a company that imported shells for decorating your house. Uber was started because its founder was standing outside in the freezing rain and was waiting for a taxi when he was in Paris. Well, Shell is now one of the biggest companies in the world, and Uber completely transformed transportation across the globe. Know the origin story of the company you're talking with or the industry. It makes you more interesting. It doesn't take much time to look this stuff up. Ask Joanne in the beginning. She did her homework. She knew that the software company she was at started as a mining company 150 years ago. Yeah, go to the website, check out the bios, do all that kind of stuff. In fact, if you know who you're talking to, run some background checks or run some background checks on the officers that are listed on the website. Totally legal. Really, you're allowed to do it. Let's go to Luther, our in-house general counsel, for a word on this. Luther, is it legal to do background checks, and what do we get out of them?
Hey, GP, background checks? totally legal for you to pay a few dollars and get access to a person's background. Most everything you get from one of these checks is a compilation of publicly available data. For example, arrest records and court judgments are usually public unless it involves a minor. GP, you want me to explain to the audience about that time I got you off on that charge?
Luther, that's fine, Luther. We don't need any enhancement to your answer. I know you're trying to follow the keys, but we don't need any enhancement on that one. Thank you. I once spoke to a young person who was getting ready for a job interview, and I suggested to her that she go to LinkedIn and learn everything she could about the people that she was meeting. And she said, but the way LinkedIn works, they'll know I was looking at their profiles. And I said, exactly. Let them know you're doing the research. That's fine. But why you do all these things, like I said, it makes you interesting. It also makes you real. Armstrong and Clinton, go back and listen to those clips. They don't sound real. They come across as liars. No doubt about it. If you went and you got some of those people at the FBI or the CIA and they watched those interviews, those people who study body language and know whether somebody's lying, they would be sitting there chuckling, okay? Because it was obvious what was going on. They were lying. They weren't being real. The other thing you had to be careful about is, hey, I'm quick on my feet. I'll handle anything in an interview. That's a recipe for disaster. And it's something you really have to be careful with. We're going to talk about that more in a little bit. What about a role model for these interviews, for a high-stakes interview? Let's use Olympic and world champion gymnast Simone Biles. Biles won 4 gold medals and 1 bronze at the 2016 Olympics. So she was favored for the next Olympics, were actually in 2021 because of COVID. She was favored to win 6 gold medals because between the 2016 and 2021 Olympics, all she did was dominate gymnastics across the planet. She won like 30-something world medals, and everybody knew she was the top gymnast. So what happened? Early in the competition, Biles just withdrew from a whole bunch of events. What was going on here? Nobody really understood. This is the Olympics, all right? She's our top gymnast. She's the top gymnast in the world. There must have been thousands of young female gymnasts who competed for those 5 coveted spots in the U.S. team. And here's the leader of the team, the best gymnast in the world, and she's walking off the field. Criticism of Biles started and then abruptly stopped. Look, I was critical right away. I said, what is she doing? What's going on here? But why did the criticism stop? It wasn't because of anything she did on the uneven bars or on the mat or vaulting. It was the way she handled the high-stakes interviews. She confronted the issues head on. I was feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. She developed a condition known to gymnasts as the twisties, which is sort of like a loss of your internal gyroscope. Here's a clip from USA Today which explains the twisties in more detail.
Simone Biles has pulled out of the team in all-around competitions here in Tokyo, saying that she has a case of the twisties. For the non-gymnastics people, here's a look at what that means. Gymnasts have a sense of air awareness. When they are doing a skill, they have a feeling of their body. Their brain kind of knows how they're going to land it. When they get the twisties, that gets disconnected. There's a short circuit between what their brain is experiencing and the muscle memory and what their bodies are doing. That's bad for a couple reasons. One, it'll just steal your confidence. Gymnasts at this level are doing the hardest gymnastics that we see, and to not be able to do that is very disorienting. 2, it's actually really dangerous. When they do vault, when they do floor, they're 8-10 feet in the air. So to lose your awareness and fall, you risk serious injury.
So what did Biles do? She spoke out. Her mental health was more important than anything else. And here's a clip of her on the Today Show speaking about this.
I say put mental health first, because if you don't, then you're not going to enjoy your sport and you're not going to succeed as much as you want to. So it's okay sometimes to even sit out the big competitions to focus on yourself, because it shows how strong of a competitor and person that you really are.
So somehow, Biles handled a potentially ugly situation. Top U.S. Olympian quits team at Olympics. She turned that into something that captured the attentions of millions, hundreds of millions of people, maybe billions of people around the globe that wanted to talk about mental health. All the haters had her shut up. My opinion, as great of an athlete as Biles was and still is, right? She's going for the Olympics this year, still in 2024. I think her best performance, the best performance of her career, was not in the gym, but in front of the microphone. There's a fine line between being confident and being boastful. If you prepare for a high-stakes interview properly, you'll have plenty to say and you'll know how to say it. This is very important. People pay more attention to how you say things than what you say, especially in a high-stakes situation. Yeah, later on, if you are on TV, if you're a president or you're Lance Armstrong, they're going to dissect every word. But if you're in a 20-minute job interview over a Zoom, people are going to pay a lot of attention to how you look, how you speak, tone of your voice. Did they feel they look confident? Did they sound like they're just scripted? What's going on here? So what I always try to advise is avoid off-the-cuff statements and avoid ad-libbing. You should have a few dozen sentences in your head and have them ready to go. Practice saying them. We all have trouble with certain words, the way we pronounce them, that sometimes we're clumsy, or combinations of words. Make sure you don't have any of those in your sentences. You don't have to be robotic, but you should be prepared to know what you're going to say. And maybe you have a few dozen replies already, and you can mix and match, change them around, but they're sentences you've practiced and you know how to say them. And you're comfortable saying them, more importantly. You will look and appear comfortable. Let's do an example of why this is so important. So here's the question from the interviewer. So, what were some things you liked about that last job? Well, and you reply, well, the staff were great. We did a lot of social activities together. We built trust in each other. I didn't have much contact with senior management, but maybe that's just the way it is at big companies. Great answer. Simple, to the point. You conveyed a lot of information, and you rattled it right off like it was easy. All right. Now, if you were to ad-lib this paragraph, if you weren't prepared for that question, and you should be prepared for that kind of question, go to any website, and I bet you they'll say, here are the top 20 questions you're going to get at any job interview. Be ready for all those questions. If you didn't practice, you weren't ready, and you said, I'm quick on my feet, I'll ad-lib, what's going to happen is emotion unnecessarily is going to creep into your answer. So you might say to the question, well, my immediate team was great, but I didn't know what all those highly paid senior managers did all day. Right? Not a great answer. You're throwing people under the bus, and you don't want to ever do that in an interview. It also helps to have a purpose for the job, right? Other than wanting a bigger paycheck. So here's a couple of quick examples. Hey, I've led small teams, and I feel I'm ready to manage a whole division. Or, hey, I have a solid record at the company for the last 5 years. The new position, I'll have to relocate, but that's okay because that's the same town as my husband's mom, and she needs ongoing medical care, so this will work for us. So be ready and have something to say. Let's finish our show with mention of who I think is the ultimate role model for high-stakes interviews. How about one of the greatest athletes who also gave the greatest interviews of all time, Muhammed Ali?
Most of all, I'm pretty. Most fighters are ugly.
Ali was a great boxing champion and a great entertainer for decades. Many don't realize that he won the heavyweight boxing gold medal at the 1960 Olympics as a very young man. Ali was a fighter in the ring, but more importantly, he was a crusader outside of the ring. He fought for civil rights. He fought for oppressed peoples. He was always critical of the hosting country where the fights were, saying you got to do more for the impoverished. You got to allow more freedom of religion. He was a great interview. He always followed the 3 keys. He always paid attention to the situation, all right, and he used that to promote his beliefs. Sometimes he went overboard, but he was never afraid to enhance his answers. Let's do a quick example of that one for you. There's a famous interview with sportscaster Howard Cosell. Cosell and Ali were kind of paired together over the years and were a great tandem. Okay, and Cosell asks Ali in a press conference, he says, Muhammad, you're fighting this man tomorrow, but you're not the same man you were 10 years ago. Many would say that about you. Ali didn't even wait a second. He goes, Howard, I didn't want to bring this up, but I spoke to your wife yesterday, and she told me you're not the man you were 2 years ago. So you had to be on your toes if you're around him. All right. He always had something interesting to say, and he always followed the three keys. But unlike Armstrong or Clinton, who are always stretching the truth or lying, hoping things would blow over, Ali had an underlying philosophy that served as his North Star. And I apologize, I looked for an audio clip on this and I couldn't find it. So I'll read it to you, it's short. When you saw me fighting in the boxing ring, it wasn't just so I could beat my opponent. My fighting had a purpose. I had to be successful in order to get people to listen to the things I had to say. I wanted to be a champion who was accessible to everyone. I hope to inspire others to take control of their lives and to live with pride and self-determination. For any high-stakes interview, follow the three keys. Pay attention to the situation, enhance your answers, and do your homework. Convince people you're real. They'll want to work with you, and in some cases, they'll be in awe of you.
I've wrestled with alligators. I've tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning and put thunder in jail. You know I'm bad. I've murdered a rock. I injured a stone. And I hospitalized a brick. I'm so bad I make medicine sick. I can drown a drink of water and kill a dead tree. Wait till you see Muhammad Ali.
This episode was recorded at Summerfield Studios. Narrated and produced by me, George Polari. Music consulting by Jimmy Lorius of Kalu Calais. Sound consulting by Chris Perazio. Editorial review by J.D. Klenke and Malen Hyrian. And never forget, 80% of success is avoiding stupidity.